We are living in a very special time, and the world is currently undergoing the greatest spiritual awakening in modern human history. This is not just a temporary wave of religious or spiritual curiosity, but something much deeper and more fundamental is happening. More and more people within the scientific community are beginning to recognize a higher intelligence or a creator of the universe. One could say that modern science is finally approaching God, not least through quantum physics and its experiments. At the same time, an increasing number of people understands that access to the spiritual world and spiritual development actually is based on an ancient scientific foundation, where the essence in many ways until recently has been hidden in mystery schools and more or less secret societies. So we are living in a very special time where science and spirituality is starting to merge, and that will change everything for the better in the long run. The path of spiritual development is a science, and it's that science Lightbridge will be about. A warm welcome to Lightbridge, a new channel where we will look widely into spiritual teachings and concepts, primarily through a scientific lens. My name is Oddane. It is a great joy for me to finally start this project. The last 8 years of my life I have been very active within the spiritual and truth community of Scandinavia, and especially my home country Sweden. It has been a challenging but also fantastic and exciting journey to be part of a network of tens of thousands of people in Scandinavia that are working for positive change and spiritual advancement. On this journey I have experienced many things that I didn't think was possible only a decade ago. My mind have been blown many times along the way when experiencing how this reality really works beyond what is seen or commonly understood. At Lightbridge, we will explore a vast amount of spiritual knowledge and anchor it in the scientific foundations of the ancient mystery schools. There is no doubt that these teachings are the most powerful teachings in our world. It is in every way about achieving our absolute highest potential, which is quite amazing given what is possible to achieve and experience as a human being. For 20 years of my life, I have dug deep into both the physical and spiritual world to understand how humanity, this world, and the universe functions and operates. About 8 years ago, I began developing what I now call Lightbridge. The foundation is this geometric model that encapsulates much of what I've learned through my spiritual awakening. And over the years, I've built upon this model to create a more and more complete path for spiritual development. I call this model the Lightbridge model, and we will use it as a foundation for understanding fundamental spiritual concepts and dynamics. Today I have great love and respect for many different spiritual teachings, mystery schools, religions and traditions, including Christianity, which holds a special place in my heart since I've spent a lot of time understanding it on a deeper level. Most people today are unaware that Christianity in many ways at its core is based on a science that aligns perfectly with the wisdom of the ancient mystery schools, something we will explore as we go along in upcoming episodes. Along my spiritual journey, I have looked broadly into a wide range of traditions to find synergies and have found amazing wisdom in many different teachings. My journey has been highly synchronistic, where the right information has often come precisely when I needed it. The more I have understood and the more I have seen the synergies between the teachings, the more I have grown. But I'm not religious, not a member of any mystery school or secret society, and I have never been. I am not an occultist, and I'm not within the New Age. I am only a truth seeker. I want to know how things really work and relate, and that quest for the truth about existence has led to fantastic experiences, insights and development both in the physical world and on the spiritual plane. The Lightbridge model is based on the wisdom of the ancient mystery schools that have existed in our world for thousands of years. The model has strong synergies with many different schools, religions and traditions, but it also has its own unique parts and ways of explaining spiritual wisdom. Above all, the Lightbridge model is a modern and scientific way to explain the path that leads to spiritual development and eventually enlightenment. My goal with Lightbridge is to make what may seem difficult and sometimes a bit overwhelming into something simple and manageable. A way to understand and integrate spiritual science as quickly as possible. It's all about breaking things down into easily understandable components and create a spiritual, scientific foundation within us. Once that is established, it's much easier to study other spiritual teachings and gain deeper insights within them right from the start. The fundamentals of the model are based on symbolism, sacred geometry, archetypes, and deep spiritual allegory, the universe's most powerful language for spiritual development. All parts are spiritual tools to expand our understanding of existence. With Lightbridge, we will embark on a very exciting journey, focusing on rapid spiritual development so we can create positive change in our lives and in the world. And not least, along that path, achieve or strengthen our personal connection with the divine. Later in this video, I will talk more about how we will work with Lightbridge moving forward, but let us start by looking at the fundamentals behind Lightbridge. What light and what kind of bridge am I talking about in the name Lightbridge? To navigate spiritual concepts or religions, we need basic knowledge about existence. We need to know the laws and principles that all creation, including us humans, are subject to. This very precise science has existed in our world for a very long time. The major religion speaks of part of it, but often in veiled terms, mystical wrappings, or in allegorical stories. And it can be very difficult to decipher the underlying science even for an experienced religious practitioner or seeker. The science of the deepest truth about existence has until recently been hidden from the masses, but at the top of societal pyramids for thousands of years, a smaller number of people have understood and cultivated this science in so-called mystery schools. There has been a knowledge advantage between the top of society and the people, and in many ways this is still the case today. Most of us have seen symbols from the ancient mystery schools, but relatively few in society understand them deeply. Again, these are very powerful teachings and tools, and they also correspond with the fundamentals within, for example, Christianity, where we can see similar symbolism. But again, I would argue that relatively few Christians are familiar with this symbolism on a deeper level. The knowledge from the ancient mystery schools is nothing short of amazing. If we study it, understand it, and apply the knowledge, it transforms our lives. It fundamentally changes how we view and interact with reality, and also, ultimately, how much of reality we can perceive and experience. Spiritual science primarily focuses on two things: the universe, which is also called the macrocosm, and man, who is also called the microcosm, and how the two interact with each other. So the essence of the teachings is the relationship between man and the universe. Human beings in many ways are a hologram or a fractal of the universe, and the idea behind the terms micro and macrocosm is based on the understanding that humans are a universe in miniature. All parts that exist in the whole also exist within the human, although less complex. By studying the universe, we learn more about ourselves, and by studying ourselves, we learn more about the universe. There is correspondence between the two. One of the most important things to understand deeply is that the same universal laws apply both in the micro and the macrocosm, within the human and in the universe. These laws, which are the very essence of spiritual science, are often referred to as natural law. So Lightbridge will primarily be about the science of man and the universe. It is all about building a bridge between the physical world and the spiritual. Since humanity's physical place in creation is on Earth, we also need to study our planet and life here from a spiritual perspective. Everything in creation is an expression of consciousness, and the world we live in, with its elements and all forms of life, is an important part of our spiritual development. What is so fascinating is that the more we understand the spiritual sciences, the more our life experience shifts on all levels. Partly because we have a greater understanding of the whole and thereby view life differently, but the more we understand, the more we also shift energetically. Everything in the universe is energy, and for life to exist, the flow of energy is necessary. Movement is needed. As soon as the flow of energy slows down, life itself slows down. For spiritual development, the amount of so-called life force that flows are crucial, but also where it flows and the intensity with which it vibrates. Even our brains that process all the information and knowledge we absorb need energy to function, and the greater flows of energy means higher capacity. What is so exciting about energy is that expanded understanding is what primarily shifts and expands a person's energetic state. The body and our physical health are also important, but it is knowledge and understanding that create the greatest change in the energy flow that shifts our life experience. Partly because we think and feel differently as we understand more, but also because knowledge in itself provides keys that immediately open new doors within our consciousness once integrated and firmly understood. It is new insights that unlock greater flows of life force, and these greater flows are also crucial for developing spiritual functions that allow us to experience and interpret the spiritual world. Knowledge itself is therefore directly linked to the flow of life force. Lightbridge focuses, as the name reveals, on light. We can easily understand that in darkness we see nothing, therefore we can't interpret our surroundings, nor can we learn anything from our environment. It takes light for us to see and learn. But within spiritual science we talk about light on many different levels. In its most basic form, consciousness itself is light. Our consciousness primarily operates on the etheric or energetic plane, something that becomes self-evident along our spiritual journey. Most people have heard of the bright light that individuals experience during near-death experiences. Religious iconography and esoteric symbols for God, angels or masters are often surrounded by rays of light and halo. And also we human beings ourselves have a field of light surrounding us that can be seen with practice and spiritual development. But more generally, within spiritual science, knowledge or information that leads to spiritual growth is called light. Knowledge that allows us to create a brighter life and life-affirming condition, but also knowledge that leads to the activation of a completely different kind of light. The word enlightenment refers to the same idea, the acquisition of knowledge or light that leads to expanded consciousness or a higher understanding of humanity and the universe. The word enlightenment is a combination of the Latin and Greek en, which means into, the English word light, and the Latin word mente, which means mind. So the word enlightenment simply means light within the mind, or into the light of the mind. And the most amazing thing is that when we have reached a certain level in our spiritual development, our energy flows have shifted so much that we activate a new part within our brain. A part of the brain that requires spiritual development and the consequent higher flows of life force and higher vibrational states to be activated. The famous third eye. When talking about the third eye, many people may think this sounds a bit new age. that is something that's not supported by Western tradition of Christianity. But nothing could be further from the truth. It is just as much Christian. For instance, in Matthew 6:22 in the King James Bible it says, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." And that's exactly how it works. Once this part of our brain is activated, we begin to see a light within our mind, and in that light begins a direct communication with the divine. But one might ask, what knowledge influences the human energy flow so powerfully, and why? All spiritual development shifts the flow of energy. The more we understand life and existence, the more stable the foundation we stand on, which gives calmness and security and thus better conditions for life. But the two opposing forces that has the biggest impact on the flow of life force are the dynamics of love and fear, of unity or separation. Love is the accelerator of life force and fear is its brake. Since we are talking about love as the accelerator, this dynamic is directly connected to our hearts and its related energy center. So our spiritual journey has everything to do about learning about love. We could just as well call natural law the science of love. And here we're not primarily talking about passionate love between two people, although close relationships are in many ways what teaches us most about love. But here we're talking about a love on a higher level, a love that also could be referred to as flow or non-resistance, a non-resistance to the flow of life force. So in many ways, the light we seek is knowledge of the universe and humanity that leads to an expanded understanding of love. By developing in love, we become individuals who stand strong regardless of the circumstances, who maintain our balance, our light, and our loving expression no matter what happens or what resistance life and the world presents. The goal is to achieve a state of unconditional love and thus total personal sovereignty. When we reach a point of unconditional love, nothing can disrupt our balance. It is a state of complete fearlessness and therefore no resistance to the flow of life force. As a result, our energy flow is high and we are in constant contact with the higher within ourselves and the higher outside of us, again, the divine. Within many spiritual teachings there is talk about love and light, and that is truly the essence of it all. Light is the information that our brains process and develop from, and love is what we learn, which gives access to an increasingly greater life experience. In every way, it's the interplay between the more emotional feminine and the more mental masculine. And when we have come far enough towards those higher states of unconditional love, the two together gives birth to what is called the sacred or divine child. In other words, a new version of ourselves that manifests things of a divine quality into our lives and into the world. But on that journey towards unconditional love and personal sovereignty, there are many obstacles to overcome and many resistances that will build our spiritual muscle and our human courage. It is not a straight line and simple journey, even if we have knowledge. We need to understand, integrate and expand, and it all happens in stages. It would be most joyful to only focus on love and light, but our world is not only good and loving. The physical world is a dualistic place. It's in every way the world of extremes and opposites, both in our own lives and in the collective. In the physical world we have everything from wonderful love, kindness, happiness, harmony and life-affirming conditions to overwhelming fear, evil, misfortune, disharmony, the degradation of life and death. But it's no accident that it is this way. For us to develop, we need contrast. We need to have these opposites to compare with and learn from. So the polarity or contrast between light and dark, good and evil, positive and negative life experiences are the evolutionary driving forces of creation. It is the opposites that creates expansion of consciousness, so we can understand life and love on a deeper and deeper level. In times of great contrast, distances between the extremes, more chaos, adversity and resistance are generated, and these are times of great learning. In times of less contrast, more harmony is generated and the learning curve evens out. Right now, we are living in a time of very large contrasts, which is challenging but ultimately positive, since it creates the conditions needed for spiritual learning and spiritual development to take place. So since we live in a world of polarity where fear, pain, evil and suffering are also a significant part of life, we need to study and analyze what is typically referred to as darkness. If we want to become holy, we need to understand the whole, not just what feels good and positive. The great role of darkness and pain in creation is precisely to awaken us and create incentives for learning and growth. Everything in our world has two sides, two opposites, and the same is true regarding spiritual practices in the world. We have so much beautiful spiritual practice in the world, mystery schools and traditions worldwide. But we also have a very dark spiritual practice in the world. A reverse type of spirituality that understands the same spiritual science at its core, but uses this knowledge for entirely different motives than advancing humanity. This reversed spirituality is often called the Dark Occult. That is, the use of, until recently, hidden spiritual science for selfish motives. And if we truly want to understand how the world works, it is crucial to also investigate and understand these darker aspects. One might also say that darkness absorbs light, which is something we will delve deeper into later. But to simplify, one could say that what is deeply painful in our lives often brings about the most significant spiritual development. That is, once we understand the cause of the pain and learn new skills on how to rise above it, then we extract the light, the knowledge or wisdom from that darkness. Okay, so let's finally take a look at how we will be working with Lightbridge moving forward. First, I would like to say that Lightbridge is created for all spiritual seekers, including those who have a specific belief or religion, since we are examining spiritual development from a scientific perspective. The Lightbridge motto is quality, simplicity and speed. We aim to create high-quality videos, both in terms of production value and content. And good spiritual knowledge should be easy to understand. There is depth and complexity to many teachings, but our aim is to convey our understanding of them as efficiently and simple as possible. And we value your time. We will keep things as short, concise and efficient as possible to provide you with essential information in as short time as possible. The programs will be divided into two main categories: Lightbridge Originals and Spirit Bites. The original series will be accumulative, meaning we will begin with the basics and work our way up so that everyone can follow along from the start. If you are new to this kind of information, it is important to follow each program, not to miss important pieces of the puzzle. Spirit Bites is what the name suggests. Shorter videos with spiritual concepts that will be only a few minutes long. A bite of spiritual wisdom you can grab as you move along your daily routines. Before diving into the spiritual science, we will in the next episode investigate where society is today and what has brought about the current state of humanity. Take care until we meet again. Lots of love to all of you and goodbye for now.